Hey everyone, and welcome. Have you ever stopped to think about the journey your phone, your shoes, or even your morning coffee takes to get to you? Well, there's this massive, invisible web of rules that governs pretty much everything crossing India's borders. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that system, Indian customs law. So, what does it really take for a product to legally get into or out of India? As you're about to see, it's way more than just loading a box onto a ship. It's a journey through a pretty fascinating and, yeah, complex legal world. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into the legal bedrock of these laws, where they even come from. Then, we'll see how trade in goods are actually managed. After that, we'll walk through the step-by-step clearance process. And finally, we'll get to know the authorities in charge and check out these unique areas called special economic zones. First up, the foundation of it all. Before we can get into all the nitty-gritty details of duties and declarations, we have to understand the why, the legal authority that makes this whole system even possible. This right here, this single sentence from the Customs Act of 1962 is really the heart of everything. This is the law that gives the government the green light to collect taxes, or what they call duties, on goods. You can think of this act as the master rulebook for everything else we're going to talk about. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The law doesn't just kick in when a ship docks at the port. Nope, its reach extends way out into the sea, into what's called the Indian customs waters. This covers the entire exclusive economic zone, and that's absolutely crucial. It means customs officers can intercept and check out a suspicious boat long before it even sees the coastline. And get this power doesn't just come from some ordinary law. It is anchored directly in the Constitution of India. Entry 83 of the Union List specifically gives the Parliament the exclusive right to make these laws. That just goes to show you, customs is a big deal, a matter of national importance handled at the highest level. Okay, so the legal authority is solid. But how does the government actually control what comes in and what goes out? This is where we get into the rules of the road for trade. And this slide points out a really critical difference. See, not all controlled goods are treated the same. Prohibited items, that's a hard no. They're completely banned, like narcotics. But then you have restricted goods. These can be traded, but you've got to have the right paperwork, like a special license to bring in firearms or even live animals. So why ban things at all? Well, it's not random. Section 11 of the Customs Act lays it out pretty clearly. These rules are in place for some very important reasons. We're talking everything from national security and stopping smugglers to protecting public health and even intellectual property like patents. All right, let's switch gears and get practical. We get the why, so now let's look at the how. What's the actual journey a product takes to get the final okay from customs authorities? When you boil it down, the whole process really comes down to these 4 key steps. It all starts when the importer files a bill of entry. You can think of this as the shipment's passport. It declares everything that's inside. Next, customs officers assess it. They check the goods and figure out the tax. Then, the importer pays up. And finally, once the payment is confirmed, the goods are cleared to officially enter the country. And to make this a little more real for all of us, just think about when you travel. The same principles are at play, just on a much smaller scale. You're usually allowed some duty-free stuff, like 1 laptop or a couple of liters of liquor. There are even very specific rules for things like how much jewelry you can bring back if you're a resident returning home. Okay, for our last section, we're going to look at the people and the places. We'll meet the folks who enforce all these rules, and then we'll dive into some unique economic areas that kind of play by their own set of customs regulations. So this whole system is enforced by a hierarchy of customs officers, from the top-level commissioners all the way down to inspectors. And let me tell you, they have some serious power to get the job done. They can search places and vehicles, they can seize goods they think are illegal, and they can even arrest people they suspect have broken customs laws. But here's something you might not expect. Customs isn't always about collecting tax. It can also be a tool to promote exports. And the duty drawback scheme is the perfect example. So imagine a company imports fabric to make shirts. If they turn around and export those finished shirts, the government actually gives them a refund on the customs duty they paid for that fabric. It's a really powerful incentive that makes Indian products more competitive out in the global market. This leads us to a really mind-bending idea. What if I told you there are places that are physically inside India, but for all intents and purposes when it comes to trade and customs, they're treated as if they're foreign territory? Well, they exist. They're called Special Economic Zones, or SEZs for short, and there are a lot of them. As of late 2021, there were 268 of them up and running across the country. Basically, these are special duty-free areas designed to be engines for economic growth, packed with top-notch infrastructure and fewer regulations. Here's a look at the Noida SEZ, which was actually one of the very first in the country. A business operating inside one of these zones can import materials without paying any customs duty, which, as you can imagine, makes it a super attractive place for companies focused on exporting their goods. And you can really see the impact in action right here. This chart breaks down the exports from just one SEZ in Moradbad for 1 year. It's clearly a massive hub for handicrafts. Look at that. Wood, leather, and metal goods make up a huge chunk of its exports. This just shows how these SEZs become these powerful, specialized hotspots for business. So from the power of the Constitution all the way to these special zones, we've seen how Indian customs law really shapes the flow of goods. But it leaves us with one final and really important question. In a world of next-day delivery and digital trade, how do these laws need to change to keep up? That's all for this time. Thanks so much for joining us.